with Chris Lee, the founder and the chief executive officer of AquaRealtime. When I look at your website, watch the video on the AlgaeTracker, it's very exciting what you're doing, the price point, and the amount of analytics that you're providing for, with a relatively small device that seems to be very accurate.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on the talk, and yeah, look forward to discussing what we're doing and what we're planning.
Good. So, Chris, give me a little bit of background on yourself, and then a little bit of background on AquaRealtime.
Okay, so I am an electrical engineer by training. I have a PhD in electrical. I started first in robotics, actually, for medical devices, then shifted to the water space about 12 years ago. So my business partner and I founded another company for algae water monitoring for commercial algae growers who were growing algae for biofuels. And so we had an optimization sensor software system to optimize those growing systems, be they ponds or photobioreactors, as different ways of doing it. As of 2018, we've been specialized in basically the other side of the coin. So these harmful algal blooms and other contaminants in water that come from nutrients and warming temperatures in the water, they cause a lot of these different problems. And so we've developed a detection system for these kinds of problems, specifically the algae blooms. So we founded that in 2018, and the product is called the AlgaeTracker, and it's a very different take on sensing and early detection than the previous companies. There's also satellite monitoring, which is very useful. We don't consider ourselves competitors with them. We're synergistic with them. So they have an excellent bigger picture view of large amounts of data. And so we have the in situ locations. So we went through our initial development and proof of concept in 2019 with some funding from various investors and Techstars Accelerator program. Went to market in 2020 during COVID, and were able to deploy quite a few of pilot devices to important customers at that time, despite the COVID. And that was leveraging also a grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, who has a vested interest in solving this algae bloom problem. 2021, more growth, more investors at a larger EPA grant. And this year, we've had some challenges, I'm not going to lie, with the global semiconductor shortage has been impacting our electronics development. But growing again, 2022, it's other than that, been going pretty well. And really excited about the directions that we're getting pulled in, a lot of different opportunities out there, and a lot of potential for improving people's access to data for water all over the world.
So about how many algae trackers do you have out there performing what algae trackers do for customers? About how many are out deployed?
I believe we're at around 120 units right now. So yeah, that's spans a lot of different kinds of stakeholders. We have about 35 or so customers at this time, or 30, 35. And like I said, this year has been, our sales and our ability to manufacture has been impacted by the semiconductor shortage, but that's where we're at now. And I think we've picked up again on the manufacturing. Everything has gotten back to normal. So we're scaling up again.
That's great. So give us an example of one of your customers and the kind of impact that AquaRealtime and the AlgaeTracker have had for that customer.
Well, we have different market segments. The one that's easy to describe the value for is drinking water utilities. So they obviously they have to get their water down to a very, very, very low level of contaminants. And if they can reduce those contaminants out in the reservoirs before it gets into their plant, they can save a lot of money. That means that they need to get out there. The status quo for them is to get out there and take manual measurements. The existing sensors that have been available up till now are really quite expensive. We're talking $30,000 each. So to deploy 10 of them, quickly gets out of hand. So with the algae trackers, they will deploy these in locations that would otherwise take them a full-time employee to hit all these different locations. They can deploy these at all these different ones and get continuous data rather than once a week or once every 2 weeks, let alone once a month. So they're able to get more data from a lot more locations, and they can set alerts as to when they need to go out there and get a next level of information. So we're part of a solution, a tech stack that we're the furthest from the plant tracking system. Once they get the alert from us, then they would go and take a closer look, take samples, maybe run it through a flow cam or some other device that will tell them a lot more detail on what they need to be doing. And then they can initiate, potentially some choosing where they would pull the water from and where they would not pull it from, and that kind of thing. Maybe do treatments in some cases, and that kind of thing. So that's a pretty simple one. It's a different application for recreational areas, beaches, and so on, making sure that beaches are available to people or that they're closed when they shouldn't be available. Saving dogs from getting sick, people from having to deal with all these different things. So, but it's always revolving around, having alerts that tell them, okay, you've got a situation brewing here. You might want to take a look.
I think your discovery of the algae tracker video on your website certainly tells a good story. And for anybody that has any interest, that's certainly a place where they can go and get started. Now you've gone from med device, and I've had some experience in med device. Now you're into water and algae. So what motivates, as CEO of the company, what motivates you every day? What gets you going?
Well, when I decide the career path that I want to take, I'm sort of first and foremost a business person, but I want to make sure that whatever I'm going to do, spending all my life on, all my time on, it has to be a good application. So obviously medical is one. For me, that didn't resonate quite as much as the environment. For me, that just happens to be the environment that's the more resonating one for me. Grew up on going to lakes in the summers, swimming, sailing, water skiing, appreciating these locations. And I can tell you the lake that I've been going to my whole life is looking quite different now than it did when I was growing up. It's not unusable yet, but plenty of lakes are unusable that were usable just 10 years ago. It's really, it's not nice. It's not a good situation. That's just looking at it from the recreational standpoint. Obviously, from the water scarcity standpoint, it's even more important. So in the biggest picture, our sensors are tabulating and storing data that pertains to rising temperatures, nutrient pollution. So I think all this data can be used in a way can be very useful for making the optimal scenario for 10, 20 years from now for our environment.
You're beginning to establish a relationship with Global Waterworks. Plenty of organization out there. What do you see in Global Waterworks that sets us apart and can benefit not only AquaRealtime, but certainly the water industry as a whole?
Well, when I first met Mary Eggert, and tremendous energy, and really what it came down to very quickly, we moved into projects that would integrate us as part of a tech stack of HAB remediation. So, like I said, we're the furthest tentacles out. We're out in the water, in the reservoir, coastlines, And we provide that first information, and we don't necessarily know who all the providers are of solutions of more targeted monitoring and analysis, lab analysis of the problem, and then mitigation. Global Waterworks, and talking to Mary, it's clear that this is like an integrated solution that they can put together. They can keep us from being siloed, keep us from being kind of off in our own world, and providing something that at the end of the day is going to be a lot more useful to a customer, which is a complete turnkey solution that integrates things. And at each level of the stack, there are different pieces that can be put in.
Yes, we've connected people all over the globe actually in harmful algae bloom remediation. So
Yeah.
the algae.
Yes, it will. So it will take readings of 6 key parameters. The chlorophyll, which is a proxy for any kind of algae. Phycocyanin, which is a proxy for the blue-green algae, aka cyanobacteria, aka the kind of algae that could be toxic.
Right.
Obviously, water temperature, turbidity as well. That's a great catch-all for any kind of things that could be affecting the water. GPS, solar light, because that affects the growth rate of these organisms. So those are the 6, and then we pull in 4 more parameters based on the weather data, the GPS location, which are the wind direction, speed, the precipitation, and the air temperature, all of which play into the growth rate, and will help us as we build up our analytics engines to have predictive indices for these waterways.
So it's great. Obviously, there's a lot going on with it. Certainly, and you're benefiting from the EPA, and the EPA says that the issue is in all 50 states. And the recent GAO report, which is basically kind of identified to the government they're not doing enough, and put together a work group to drive that forward. And certainly we're getting involved in both those areas. So with that, what do you see for AquaRealtime over the next 18 to 36 months? What are you looking at? Where's your focus?
So we have a couple of different kind of initiatives, I guess you would call them. One is ongoing on the predictive analytics side. That's a long game. There's a lot of information to be brought in. We're going to start probably exposing some of that in initial forms of that. We also have there's a lot of traction and a lot of pull towards making a device that would be more suitable for pretty much the ocean, like open air, really further away from shore. That would be using satellite communications and using slightly different packaging of the existing core functionality that would be more rugged, more able to deal with further distances and such. And then there's just kind of day-to-day usability of these sensors. So we have the ability, unlike our competitors, to update our software at any time, both on the trackers themselves. They're always connected. It's just like a Tesla. You might get a new firmware updated over the air. We can do that. So we can add improvements to both what you see on the dashboard and how the trackers behave. So we have things that we've added recently, for example, are the ability to calibrate your data instead of it to be in a relative unit into micrograms per liter using samples that you take. Other things are tagging events, like if you're doing treatments in your waterway, or if there's a big sediment flow in your waterway, you can tag events and have them show up on the charts and such. So ongoing improvements to the software and various things going on the hardware side as well. Always eager to jump on a call with any stakeholders to get input on how to improve our product.
Right. Well, Chris, this has been very, very good. I mean, your product and your direction certainly there's a big place in the marketplace for you that certainly we see, and obviously you see it. You started into running the company. We appreciate the time you spent today with us and look forward to working with you in the future through Global Waterworks. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Okay, well, thanks for having me, and best of luck to you too. Great work.